Blast Radius Woodsball Podcast, episode 212. This is the podcast where you'll find out more about Woodsball, recreational paintball, and scenario games. My name is Wayne. So Ben, our guest today on Blast Radius Woodsball Podcast, episode 212, is Gary from PaintballPhotography.com. I know you've seen a lot of his images around the web, but he's one of the best photographers in the business.
He sure is. I've seen a lot of his images on Facebook and around the web, and he sure is really good at capturing the events and what's going on around him. They're awesome. Yeah, plus all the print magazines as well. If you've picked up any print magazine in the past couple of years, you've definitely seen some of his photography. He's been all over the world, and he talks about all of his experiences here on the show in this episode. He's got an interesting perspective on all different angles of the sport, all types of games. It's a really great conversation. We're happy to bring that to you. Ben, one of the best ways to get a hold of Blast Radius Woodsball Podcast, whether it's this episode or any episode, is to download it using the iPhone app or the Android app onto your smartphone. So you can carry the show with you wherever you go, download it or stream it whenever it's convenient for you, right? Sure is. You can actually use the iPhone app on an iPad as well, and you can stream straight from that as well. Yeah, we updated the graphics there so that it looks pretty sharp, right? Looks pretty good. Looks excellent.
Nice. So download your version of the iPhone or iPad app or the Android app, whatever you're into there. So $1.99 on either of the respective stores. It's a great price to pay for all the current information with everything to do with interviews, news, and reviews here at Blast Radius Woodsball Podcast. And now here's your feature segment. This is Wayne with Blast Radius Woodsball Podcast. I have on the line today the man behind PaintballPhotography.com, Gary Baum. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's been great to watch your global travels, if you will, Gary, across all of the different types of events that you cover, watching what types of photographs end up on PaintballPhotography.com. You have definitely have an eye for the sport. So how did you get started? How did you get to be in this position as a world-renowned photographer of paintball?
It's kind of a long story, and it sort of amazes me how this all happened. And it's something that just happened. I guess I was in the right place at the right time. I would say a little over 10 years ago. Well, I've been involved in paintball since the mid-'80s,
wow.
Playing and. About 10 years ago, I got out, and about 10 years ago, my kids were old enough to play, and they played. And one day, my son, who is still playing, suggested that I bring a camera onto the paintball field at the local field. And I thought, well, okay. And so I showed up at Hollywood Sports. They had just opened, and I brought a camera. And I went onto the field, and as I was leaving the field, the referee, his name was Julian, I remember him quite well, he said, "What are you doing with a camera?" And I go, "I'm taking pictures of people playing paintball." And he said to me, "Why?" And I go, I don't know. People might want to see them. And he goes, "Well, we really don't know what you're going to be doing with those images, and we don't want you to do that anymore."
Oh, wow.
I said, "Okay." So I showed up the following week, and Julian was there again. He says, "Oh, you're back. You're that paintball photography guy." I go, "That's an interesting name." And I go, "Yeah, I'm back, and you take some more pictures." And he said, "I'll let you take, a couple of games, and we really don't know what you're doing with these, so we really don't want that here anymore."
Oh.
And that's kind of how it got started. And my son really was the genesis behind this. He suggested that we register a domain name, and paintball photography was wide open. I think I registered it for $10 a year. And I don't know really kind of what happened. I mean, I do it because I like it. I love the sports.
Right.
I went to an NPPL event. Probably it's been maybe 10 years ago, and I showed up at the NPPL event. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I will anyway. And you can I showed up at the event, and Camille, who is now a good friend of mine, she said, "Well, who are you with?" And I go, "I need a media pass." And I go, "I'm with paintballphotography.com." And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh yeah, you guys have been so great to us in the past." And I said, "Yeah, we're even better now." And I got my media pass, and I just went onto the field, pretended like I knew what I was doing,
right.
And not much has changed.
Great story. Good stuff. So this is your side hobby, right? This is not your normal profession. This isn't your Monday through Friday 9 to 5. I've heard rumors that you have something to do with dentistry.
Yeah, actually, I'm an orthodontist. I have always had an interest in cameras. I pretty much grew up with cameras. I've never taken a photography class in my life.
Huh.
I just have a basic understanding of how cameras work, how depth of field, all the different parameters of cameras. And also, I have probably seen more paintball played than anybody alive, I would say. I mean, I've been to just about every PSP and MPPL event. And I'm very good at pattern recognition. I can look at a paintball field and I can see the lanes immediately.
Right.
And typically, when I take pictures, I do something different than most photographers. Most photographers close one eye. I keep both my eyes open. I'm ambidextrous. I can shoot my right eye or my left eye. My other eye is always looking around the field. I'm like a chameleon.
Huh.
And I can see the lanes. I can see patterns. And with tournament paintball, I like all forms of paintball, but with tournament paintball, it's the same thing over and over again. There are only about 5 things the player can do, and there are only about 10 pictures I can take. So it's pretty straightforward and easy. And I guess I have a knack for it. I don't know where it comes from.
It looks really good. Everything that comes across your site is definitely top quality, and as you obviously you're getting plenty of coverage in every type of print publication and even online.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of your relationships with those print magazines.
Well, I've been involved in just about every magazine that's been out there. As they come and go, it kind of is very sad. We've lost so many of them. I think that we all need to support print media in our sport. Our sport is too big not to have magazines.
Right.
We've lost so many great magazines. The only magazines that exist now are Action Pursuit Games, and I do a lot with them, and they have more of an orientation to Woodsball and not a lot of tournament. And I'm one of the editors now for Faithful magazine. They're based in France. I do a lot with them. The other magazines I work for, there's one called Headshot, which is based in Moscow, which is only in Russian and probably not heard of in North America. And the other magazine I'm starting to do a little bit with is a magazine called Ramped, which is a magazine that's based in Southeast Asia.
Huh.
Again, those are, I don't think I've left anybody out, but those are our remaining print magazines. And hopefully they're going to stay in there and be around.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a huge change, and in that time, kind of take from your perspective, Gary, the changes that you've seen in that. Obviously, the decline is the obvious thing, but what other changes have you seen, not necessarily in print media, but just in paintball in general, in the time that you've been taking photographs of the sport?
For me, what I've seen, there's been so many changes with rates of fire and the level of athleticism in the players today is different than it was 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, 4 or 5 years you go to a tournament and every single team had a big fat guy in the back who played center and back.
Right.
And now you don't see that anymore. They're gone. They're all athletes. And what I'm starting to see more is that tendency towards athleticism is now spreading into the Woodsball world. And as Woodsball players become more competitive, the big fat guy's not there in Woodsball either now.
Right.
And I think it's turning the sport into, more of a sport, which is good.
Good. Well, tell us about the technology that you use to do your shooting during a game. What kind of gear do you typically take to an event?
Well, for me, I've sort of grown up with Canon, and I've used it all my life. But, I have a saying that fishing poles don't catch fish.
That's right.
So it doesn't really matter, but I have, a very impressive array of Canon equipment that I have accumulated over the last decade or so. I don't know if you have camera geeks who listen in, but
Sure. Yep.
typically I shoot. Typically, I have a different setup for a tournament or a scenario event or a big game. But typically, I carry 3 bodies with me on the field. The bodies are Canon 1D 1D Mark IVs. On one of them, I put a 300 2.8 prime. The other one, either a 7200 2.8 or a 28 300. And then I have a third body, which I use for portraits and fisheye kind of pictures, and that's either a Canon Rebel or a 60D or, an inexpensive Canon body. And then I've been doing this for so long, I sort of have a whole routine that borders on obsessive compulsiveness. What I've learned is I need to be absolutely self-sufficient on the field.
Right.
It used to be that there were secure media areas at tournaments for photographers, but those are no longer really that secure. So I carry everything with me. And so I end up walking around with like 50 pounds of camera gear on me. I look like a geek with my vest, but every single pocket has a function, and I'm like Inspector Gadget, but it all works. For the scenario events, I'm out there for hours and hours at a time.
Right.
For me, that's in photography, that's my true love. I don't know if we should get into this, but tournament photography is very repetitive. I can do it. It's very robotic. It's the same thing over and over again. I know the players. I know how they think. If I can see their eyes, I know what they're thinking, and I can see things that they can't see, and I know when they're going to get whacked. And tournament photography, there's a defined sideline. There are inflatable bunkers. You look for the burn marks on the ground. It's easy.
Right.
What amazes me is when I go to scenarios, there's so few photographers. I was at D-Day last year, and I think other than a couple of point-and-shooters, there was maybe one other photographer on the field.
Right.
And that amazes me. This is an event of 2,500 people from all over the world, and I just wonder where are all the photographers. You go to a tournament, and I got to step over all the photographers that get in my way. And scenario photography is three-dimensional. There's no sideline. You get the shit shot out of you. Hopefully, I can say that. Much more than you do in tournaments. You're not on the sideline. You walk right through the middle of stuff, and things, you get shot a lot. And
right.
That's just the nature of what I do. And, I tell a lot of photographers, if you're worried about your equipment, then you shouldn't be shooting paintball.
That's definitely true. Actually, Gary, I was at Oklahoma D-Day, and I did see you on the field there. We were on opposite sides of huge crowds of people in all the occasions that I saw you there. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself, but I did recognize you there. So one of the things that I saw about the pictures that you posted after the event were the ones that you took from a glider. So tell us about the cutting-edge technology that you've got going on down there.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, and I always have to think of new things. And really what triggered that is there's a very good friend of mine, Eric Chateau. He's probably the best photographer in Europe. And he did a series of pictures in Jungle magazine, which unfortunately is no longer around,
right?
Where he had players halfway submerged in water. So he kind of went underwater with his pictures. So I thought to myself, how am I going to, come up with something better than that? So I thought I can't go in, so I got to go up. And I grew up flying radio-controlled airplanes.
Right.
And I've flown hang gliders, and I found a company that makes, it's basically a motorized hang glider, but it's a 6-foot wingspan. And I talked to the guy who owns that. If anybody wants to email me, I can give them information. It's a very inexpensive little airplane, and I mount a still camera and a high-resolution video camera on it. It folds up, fits in a suitcase, and I've taken it to I took it to D-Day. Only one person shot it at D-Day, no damage. Almost got arrested with the thing in Galveston at the PSP because I was flying near an airport.
Oh, no.
I flew it over Huntington Beach. If you go to YouTube and Google and look up my name on YouTube, you can see a lot of the videos.
Right.
And then I managed to crash it into the field at the Chicago MPPL event during the middle of the game. Most embarrassing, but it was quite entertaining. I kept the cameras running all the way down. Almost hit a player. But it's just something different to do. I will probably, the next international event I'm going to actually is in Thailand, and I'll probably bring that.
Nice.
It's fun.
Well,
It allows me to do three things I like. I like photography, I like flying airplanes, and I like paintball. So I can do three things I like at once.
Nice.
It's really fun.
Well, you mentioned some of the overseas work that you're doing. Tell us about. We've kind of caught you in between events. I know you've been very busy in the past couple of weeks. Tell us about some of the places you've been.
Well, I did the 3 World Cup events, 3 different continents in the past, 5 or 6 weeks. The final event, the Millennium Final event in Europe, which takes place at Euro Disney. The next one was the PSP World Cup, which is in Florida, and then I just got back from World Cup Asia, which took place in an island off of Malaysia called Langkawi. Amazing events. It's amazing to see what is happening in paintball overseas. It's just absolutely amazing. What the Europeans are doing is fantastic. What the Malaysians are doing in World Cup Asia is beyond fantastic. The government's behind their events. Their king comes out and starts the events. The prime minister is there because the events are subsidized by the government.
Wow.
And they're huge into scenario events there also. It's great. One of the things that causes paintball to grow a tremendous amount in Malaysia is airsoft is illegal. In fact, if you're caught with an airsoft gun, they hang you.
Whoa.
So all the airsoft players turn into paintball players.
Right. Really quickly, I would think.
So yeah, really quickly. So it's illegal in Malaysia, Singapore, so anything that looks like a gun.
Right.
And they go to prison, and it's a death penalty. So everybody has paintball guns. They want a gun sport. It's great.
Well, tell us about some of the differences you notice in those different far reaches of the world and how paintball is surviving and possibly thriving in other parts of the world. You've told me in the past that it's more successful in other markets than here in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, and for me, first of all, I love paintball all over the world. I'm involved in every aspect of it, and I don't want to say something that one country's better than the other, but we may have started the sport here, but I think overseas they've taken it further than we have. I was at a scenario event in Moscow a year and a half ago, and that is remarkable, what they do in Moscow. It's a field that's half the size of D-Day with more players.
Wow.
And for instance, in Russia, the scenario teams practice and train for events, and which is unheard of.
It is.
And
yeah.
The level of play there is incredible. The intensity of play. I mean, you go to a scenario event here, and for the first 2 or 3 hours, it's pretty intense, and everybody's in the parking lot having a barbecue. In Russia, it is just full bore the whole time. It's like the final battle, but consistently.
Wow.
And they take the whole thing very seriously. And in Russia, they use live explosives. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you would just disappear.
Oh.
They have. At D-Day, you see a tank rolling down a road, and it's made out of, plywood and cardboard, and you kind of laugh at it. In Russia, when you see a tank, going through the bushes, knocking down trees ahead of you, and it points its turret at you, you got a big problem because it could kill you.
Oh, God.
So, but they, just the love for the sport in Russia is amazing. Everyone knows Russian Legion, and they're very famous, but the interesting thing is there are very few tournament players in Russia. It's scenario that's gigantic, and they cannot get enough stuff, and they all want to come to D-Day.
Wow.
They all want to come to our events.
Right.
And, I remember being at the event, and I was in, a foxhole, and people were shooting, and there were things exploding all around me, and there were 2 Russian players who looked at me, and they spoke to me in Russian, and I said, no, I speak English. He said, are you English? And I go, no, I'm American. He goes, oh, do you know the Psycho Clown Posse? Do you know Krusty the Clown? Here I am in Russia, in this foxhole. This person's asking me about scenario players. It's just amazing. And then in Malaysia, they, as part of their World Cup, they do a scenario event, a about 10 miles from the World Cup tournament. And again, that's sponsored by the government, and it's like Russia, full-on explosives.
Wow.
It's amazing what you can do in events when you don't have lawyers, you know?
Yes.
There's just no limit to what they can do.
Excellent.
And it's just fun.
Well, what are you, looking into your crystal ball, Gary, looking forward into what's going to change in the global scene of paintball? What kinds of things do you expect to happen?
Boy, that's a hard question to answer. I think in the U.S., the two tournaments, and forgive me for saying this, the two leagues in the U.S. need to probably work more together and look overseas and see what's happening, because we have invented the sport, but we've been overtaken. The level of organization and infrastructure in Europe and Asia is remarkable. And that's probably true with the tournaments, and Dwayne Commerce is not going to like what I'm about to say, but I think for scenario players, it used to be the holy grail, the ultimate event to go to was D-Day,
right.
And now I think that has changed. I think it's the big game in Moscow, which this year is on May 18th or 19th, May 9th, Saturday.
That sounds right.
And Nikolai Sobolov runs that, and it is an experience that is absolutely remarkable. And then the day after that, they're doing a paintball tournament on Red Square in front of the Kremlin.
Wow.
And, you know, the government's behind it. Can you imagine doing a paintball event in Washington, D.C. on the lawn in front of the White House?
Right. I can't.
No way.
No.
But, but I think the tournament world has to get together. All the people in North America need to work together. And with the magazines, I think magazines need to spend more time covering scenario paintball, because that's where the numbers are.
Right.
But the media seems to think that tournament runs the world, and that may be more glamorous, but that's not where the numbers are. The numbers are in scenario events, and I can gauge that by keeping track of users on my site. When I post pictures from a big scenario event, I have many, many more users looking at pictures than the tournament.
Huh. Interesting. Well, Gary, tell us about what's next for you. What other events do you have coming up?
I want to do a couple of local events. One of the problems that I have is I get to go to so many international events and do so much traveling that I don't get to go to local events anymore. And that kind of bothers me, because that's who I started. And there are lots of friends I have
right.
that I don't get to hang out with anymore. So next events, there's like a Toys for Tot at the local Toys for Tot scenario event, the local field, what else? A Woodsball Tournament League event that David Justin runs.
Right.
In Arizona, I may do that. A couple of local events, and then there's an event in Mexico I do every year, which is not too far from where I live, and good friends there. And then next year, the usual events again. You know, I have Huntington Beach, and then the Pan Asian League in Thailand, and then the PSP events, and then D-Day, and all the events again.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it. It's fun.
Good. Well, we're definitely glad to have you out there snapping pictures of all the great action of all the events across the world. It's great to be able to see those images come back from all the far-flung places that you visit, and we definitely appreciate that. So please keep it up. Keep it up.
Oh, yeah, and I have probably, in the past, I've had maybe 50 different photographers all over the world. I have pictures from events all over the world, not just from me, but other photographers. And, I'm doing this because I like it.
Well, excellent. Well, we're definitely glad that you keep on going. Gary from paintballphotography.com, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Tell us, if you had some tips to give to newer photographers. A lot of people try to take pictures of paintball games of all different types of varieties. What tips can you offer to those people who are trying to get their perspective just right, or the right position, or the right gear? What tips do you have?
Some really simple tips. First of all, most people start taking pictures and they don't really look through the viewfinder. They just kind of point the camera. You have to look at the entire image. You need to get close to people.
Right.
Also, pictures of the backs of people's heads doesn't work. You got to get pictures of them looking at them. And one of the byproducts is that if they're looking at you, if you're in front of them and they're shooting a gun, they're probably going to be shooting at you.
Right.
And that's just and also if they're shooting at you, there's probably somebody behind you shooting at you also. So you're going to get shot up, and you really can't be afraid of that. But to get close to people, for me, I like mirrored lenses because there's a picture in a picture, or
Right.
I like clear lenses because I can see somebody's eyes and there's expression.
Interesting.
But get close to people. I don't know how technical you want me to get. I find that the cameras are not that important. The lens is more important. Shutter speed-wise, for me, about 800 to 1,000th of a second is about the best for paintball photography. Anything slower than that, and the paintballs don't really show up. Anything faster than that, the paintballs look like marbles suspended in the air. They're not very dramatic. At about 800th of a second, it makes like this streak,
Right.
which looks cool.
Yeah.
What else? Always shoot with the sun at your back. You know, as a general rule of thumb, I tell people your shadow kind of points to what you should be taking pictures of.
Yep.
And just be aware of lighting. What else? Also, you know, just take pictures. Just do it a lot. You'll figure it out. There's been a huge trend with lots of the local photographers, young people, up-and-coming people. They do all kinds of post-processing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a big fan of that. I think there's no amount of post-processing or camera tilting that's going to make a mediocre picture a good picture. You got to have a good picture to begin with.
Right.
And it takes time. You know, I tell people for paintball photography, it's really 1/3 equipment, 1/3 knowledge of the sport in your cameras, and 1/3 luck.
And it seems like with the digital age now, with so many, you can take so many images in an outing without needing to worry about reloading the film. You just keep pulling the trigger, right? It's just keep trying, right?
Yeah, and you know what I tell people is I may not be a good photographer, but I know a good picture when I see one. So if I know where to stand. If I stay there long enough and hold that button down long enough, something's going to happen, and then several days after the event, I have thousands of pictures to go through, and it's like a treasure hunt for me. And I kind of enjoy that because I see all kinds of amazing things that I didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and it makes me know more about the sports. And, you know, now I can go on to at least a tournament field, and I can predict the future. I know exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
And there's some patterns that happen with scenario events, but they're much harder.
Sure.
But also for photographers, you'll be a better photographer if you shoot scenario.
Huh.
Tournament's easy. Once you master scenario photography, then you can shoot better tournaments. So get out on the field and shoot scenarios. They're harder, more rewarding, more difficult. You have to be more creative, and it will make you a better photographer.
And a lot of people are trying to take the right picture to get published in a print magazine. And one of from the photographers that I've known in the past who shot paintball events, they were always after that special shot. And you mentioned this earlier, if you're choosing the right speed of capturing that ball in flight just after it leaves the tip of the barrel seems to be the holy grail to make sure that you get printed. Is that still the case?
Well, it depends on which magazine you work with. But usually everybody's after splats. You get a splat, it's like the greatest picture in the world, and it gets published. And, you know, just because you have a paintball breaking on somebody, but it's a bad picture, it's still a bad picture. So you need more than that. And just to have, you know, it has to be a good picture, well composed, well lit, but there has to be another element in it. You know, I spent a lot of time studying what Roman does at Faithful, and I sort of learned a style from him, sort of the use of negative space and pictures that are edgy. I don't know how else to describe it. Almost uncomfortable sometimes to look at.
Yep.
And that's a style that predominates through Faithful. A lot of the American magazines more wanted, you know, the usual guy getting shot in the face kind of pictures, falling down, or, you know, the guy behind the bunker shooting with the ball flying out. And I can do that, and, you know, I can go either way.
Right.
But to get published these days, it's harder and harder because there are fewer and fewer magazines, and probably it's difficult because I'm around.
That's right.
And the weird thing is I don't do anything to promote myself. The magazines all come to me.
Nice.
And I turn down probably half of what's offered to me because I simply don't have time.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we do appreciate all the time and effort you put into it as a side project, as a hobby. That you definitely make a huge contribution to the entire community. So
Thank you.
It makes us all look good. Thank you very much, Gary.
Yeah, thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Serenity of the Irregulators Paintball Team, and you're listening to Blast Radius Woodsball podcast.
Anytime you want to contact us with feedback or show ideas, you've got a few ways you can do that.
Send us an email, studio@brwp.net.
Call the studio line on 303-952-0274.
You can also contact us on Twitter, Facebook, or Skype.
Or you can post on our forum. You can get to there by our website, brwp.net.
We're glad you've tuned into the show today. Since 2006, we are your independent paintball podcast resource. My name is Wayne, and on behalf of my co-host Ben, thanks for clicking on Blast Radius Woodsball Podcast. Play hard, play safe, and have fun.
Eggnog or the condiments.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You've been listening to a Lucky Six Productions podcast.